appreciate you guys spending part of your holiday with us today. Grade, and it gets steeper from time to time, and these seats are pretty slippery, so you might want to introduce yourself to those passengers across from you. You could end up in their lap. At least you know their first name, right? We got some really cool people on board this train all the time. We had a Nobel laureate last week, and no telling who you're sitting next to. A lot of great folks. I'm sure you're one of those special people. on an airplane. You get up there, you're going to be amazed. Not quite sure what the cloud pattern is today, but it should be a gorgeous view. We're starting the day out here in Engelmann Canyon. This canyon was named after a German botanist who came out here in the 1880s. His name was George Engelmann. And he was looking for new discoveries in the American West. One of those was a spruce tree that he identified and cataloged, now known as the Engelmann spruce. It's very highly sought after for building wood instruments. It has just the right density to produce a rich tone and resonance. I've actually seen people up here on the mountain when I hike during the summer, a saw in one hand and a Forest Service permit in the other hand. I asked them before what they're up to. They say they're looking for a guitar tree. So they do actually make wood instruments out of this Engelmann spruce. That's the one that's got a lighter colored, kind of an olive colored short leaf, and usually always a parchment bark. It's kind of like a birch tree bark almost for an evergreen tree. As we go up today, I'll tell you about stuff off to the either side of the train. It'll be the two-seat side, right? 1, 2 on this side, 3-seat side over here I'll refer to. If I said left or right, half of you'd be looking one way, right? Half the other. We got a lot of neat things to see. Right here on the two-seat side, you'll see an interesting diamond-shaped rock. That's the result of the process called frost wedging, where this Pikes Peak granite will absorb moisture during the year. And then during these cold winters, that moisture will expand and fractures the rock in unusual shapes sometimes. And there's a lot of examples of that happening along here with this Pikes Peak granite as you see along the way. I'll point out a couple of other examples as we go. We've got one large boulder up here that looks like somebody took an axe to it and just split it right down the middle. That was done through the process of frost wedging. See off on the two-seat side, Ruxton Creek, sometimes frozen over now and running under the boulders, but we'll pass by and over both sides of the train. We'll see Ruxton Creek along the way. That creek was named after George Ruxton, who was a pioneer homesteader in this area. There's actually a town site up here ahead called Ruxton Park. With some really interesting history. I'll tell you about that when we get there. Now population 0. You guys on the two-seat side are going to see the first waterfall of the day coming up. You need to be looking forward in the train. It'll be just below your eye level, just almost right next to the train. It's called Rose Emma Falls, named after a couple of daughters of one of the early pioneers of this canyon. Rose Emma Falls. We'll see if it's even visible. Maybe behind a curtain of ice, but it is running. There it is.
Oh, stop, don't do that.
And there's another one coming up on the 3-seat side too. You'll be here about maybe 30 seconds or so. This is a real amazing, higher than Niagara Falls actually. You'll see it right about eye level, 100 feet out or so, looking forward again to the train. We'll get a good view of it coming back down as well, but there you guys in the front of the train can see it now, Minnehaha Falls. And that's beautiful, right behind that curtain of ice. Minnehaha, anybody recognize that name from American literary history? Well, I'll give you a hint. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the poem Song of Hiawatha. Minnehaha was the great love in the life of Hiawatha, the central character. But I heard a very different story from a Native American elder many years after I'd read that poem. I'll tell you about that on the way down. We're moving into a siding right now. We slow down when we come to these switches just for safety's sake. There's a train that we will be passing. It'll be on the two-seat side coming up. Maybe. No, it'll be on the, well, it's in front of us. Let's see, we're going to have to do a little shuffle here. No, it'll be on our two-seat side. That's one of our Santa trains. Anybody expecting to see Santa Claus in the near future? Well, we bring a lot of families and kids up here on our Santa trains. He happens to be down at the depot now. They're going to go back down and see Santa. It's a real family tradition here in the area. We run these trains. The Optimus Club Elves do the caroling and the hot chocolate and the marshmallows, and see mostly children there. If you're ever in the region and haven't done a Santa train, you can call our ticket office and ask about tickets on the Santa train. Always a lot of fun. A long tradition in the Pikes Peak region. If you look off to the three-seat side, you'll see another example of that frost wedging. That huge boulder there looks like Paul Bunyan took his axe to it. That can only happen by the force of nature. And that's what breaks those rocks down. Over millions of years, that rock will be gravel. It's right out about 100 feet. That forest looks a little thin too, right up there on the hill. There was a beetle infestation back in 1970, and it's coming back now. Scientists actually tell us we're looking at another beetle and a moth infestation now. And 20 years from now, this mountain could be without evergreen trees whatsoever. It'll come back over the long cycle of time. But you guys will have seen it in all its splendor today. Pike National Forest. We're getting ready to head up on one of the steeper inclines on the railroad. It's not too very long, but it is one of the steepest. It's a 25% grade. What that means is that for every 100 feet we go forward, we go 25 feet up. Standard railroad could never do that. But we're running 1,200 horsepower hydraulic transmissions with a gear meshing in the center rack rail that are essentially dragging us up the mountain. Very safely too. This is called Son of a Gun Hill. Actually, it's back in the days of steam when we had steam engines doing this same route. The story goes that the firemen would be shoveling coal in there to get that bit of steam up. He'd get up there and he'd turn to the engineer and say, "That was a son of a gun," or something like that. Isn't this amazing, going through a narrow canyon on a railway? No cars. Thank God. There's an old homestead cabin out to the three-seat side. Somebody's idea of paradise many years ago. Could have been George Ruxton, we just don't know. You guys might want to crack your window just maybe a half inch or so. Every window doesn't matter, but it'll keep the fog from forming on these windows. Definitely don't want to mess up your view. And if we do that just a tiny little bit up and down the train, we'll keep clear windows and warm. I think that'll do it. I can feel that little breeze coming through. That's all we need. We're heading up here Nearby, and I'll point it out when we get there, an old homestead site. A fellow by the name of Tom Paulsgrove was up here. Most folks in the homestead days were looking for fertile farmland. Some folks just wanted a piece of paradise up in these beautiful mountains. I think I would have been one of those. Tom built him a little one-room cabin up here, right in those flat spots off on the 3-seat side above this waterfall. And he picked a lucky spot almost to Strucket Ridge, really, because just a few years later they started running mule trains and burro passenger trains up to the summit. And they had to come right through this narrow stretch of the canyon and past his cabin. And he realized pretty quick that a lot of those Victorian prim and proper ladies side saddle on a burro would get about this far. They'd get more stubborn than the burro. They weren't going any further, at least that day. So he set up this lodge out there, set right out there, beautiful spot, and it grew to become a 23-room Adirondack-style lodge. And people from the east would come out here and stay all summer, enjoying this beautiful little spot. Then the railroad was built, and even more people showed up, and that was called Halfway House. There's a really nice picture of that lodge in a small book that we offer on the train, only on the train, not available in the depot, or even up at the Summit House. It's a $4 book that shows a whole lot of information about this region, and it has a nice picture of that lodge in there as it was in its heyday. Here's Ruston Park we're entering into, another cabin ruin there. We're going to pass a road right up here in front of the train. You can see it now. If you look down the 3-seat side, see a cobblestone building way back there. That's actually a hydroelectric generating plant that still operates today, part of the Colorado Springs utility system. And it generates enough electricity for about 200 homes still today. Neat thing about that is it used a very early form of the technology. In fact, the actual development of alternating current, which was achieved in this area by somebody you may have heard of, Nikola Tesla. Anybody? He had his laboratory just east of Manitou Springs. Spent 3 years here developing those theories. That plant uses that technology, and it was when he finished here in 1901, headed out back east to try to commercialize it. And the inventor he was, he ran up against another guy who claimed to have all the answers for electricity. That guy was Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison had something called direct current, right? Not alternating current. So Tesla and Edison duked it out for several years before a guy by the name of George Westinghouse got involved, right? I see some heads nodding. George really recognized the supreme value of alternating current because it can be transported or transmitted over transmission lines a lot further distances without losing a lot of energy in the process. Use smaller wires, therefore a lot less material, and then much smaller transmission towers and all of that. So Westinghouse and Tesla hooked up. They built that power station at Niagara Falls, much to the chagrin of Thomas Edison. And the rest is industrial history. It changed the face of the entire Earth. A lot of it was done, achieved, developed right here in this area. Everybody having a good time yet? Beautiful views. I'll just let you guys soak it in for a while and be back with you and tell you a little bit about Pikes National Forest in a minute. might have noticed when we pulled out of the station shortly after we passed those familiar Forest Service signs that welcome and entering the Pike National Forest. It's about a 1.1 billion acre forest. We're on the extreme eastern boundary of it now. It includes all of Pikes Peak and surrounding area. That forest boundary is larger than the state of Delaware. There's a lot of wildlife in here, teeming with it. Really not too much we're seeing lately. They're all hunkered down for winter. Although we saw a huge herd of Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep